Well, good morning, everybody. I can't tell you how happy that we are that you are here to join us today. Gian mentions that he has the best job on there, and I'm just glad I get to hang around with him and do some of these things. For some of the that I've not met before, I've been on the Mustang since the fourth generation, Gen 4, Gen 5, and SVT roll and Ford Performance. Launched the Gen 5, launched the Gen 6, then also spent 4 years working directly for Carroll Shelby before he passed away. So kind of enthusiastic about this. Been glad that I am part of the 55 years and 6 generations of Mustang. And this current year, or previous year, we've actually outsold globally all of the sports car competitors individually almost 2-1. And after 55 years and 6 generations, we put 113,000 people into Mustangs last year to put smiles on their faces. And how are we able to do that over a period of time? There's some really core pieces to the Mustang from back in 1964. Right? There's no such thing as a 64 and a half. They're all titled 65. Job 2 started, different plants at different times when we swapped over parts, but they were all titled 65. But back in that time frame to today, there's been some key things. One is a great design, right? When Lee Iacocca and the Fairlane Committee started doing this Mustang for the people who had disposable income coming back from World War II, part of it had to be a great design. Part of it had to be about that American freedom, that spirit associated with it. So you had great design, you had personalization to make it your own Mustang, right? And if you think a lot of you have attended, I've seen you at SEMA, where you see, it's the most customizable sports car on the planet, right? I mean, you see Mustangs there, so it's personalizable. The third piece, and this is what Carl and people like Mr. Del Zio do, who are passionate engineering folks, it is a performance derivative that you can not only take out of the box and drive extremely well from a performance standpoint, but to modify it personally for your performance tastes. So those things, if you think about it, 64 and a half, 65, we had 2 GT models, different GT models. Then, Lee Iacocca goes back over to Carroll and some of the Holman Moody folks who were, racing the Mustangs. The first racing Mustang wins were actually in 64 in France. But they went back over there and they said, hey, can you make this Mustang a performance car? So in January of 65, Carroll rolls out 74 of the GT350s to certify for SCCA Production B. You needed 100 cars. He completed 74, and then he pushed the rest of them back in line to count the 100, which is some of the things that Carroll liked to do. But that car itself, the first vehicle of the competition model, not the R, but the competition model, won 13 of its 15 original races and won SCCA Production B for the first 2 years that it was in there. We've turned and made Mustang that was a beautiful design, a nice grand touring car, into a performance monster. Now, a lot of us, and I'm about as old as the Mustang is, remember the performance heydays of the 60s as, those were the biggest, baddest time for performance vehicles. And what Carl and Mr. Del Zio and the rest of the engineering team have been able to do recently is now the time to be that performance car and sports car segment. There are 9 different performance derivatives in the 2020 model year. Now, if you go back, we had the GT350s, we had the GT500s, Carroll had his little King of the Road with the stripe kit, you had the Boss 302, the Boss 9s. We didn't have 9 different derivatives back then. We have 9 derivatives of performance vehicles on the 6th generation Mustang. And we're really happy that it's not the 60s that was the performance heyday for Mustang, but it is today. So how did we get here with this car, the high performance package? As Gian was saying, we work with some pretty passionate people and some pretty great engineering people who are not just developing a car, they're living their passion. So if you think about it, and a lot of us know people, who literally, if you have time and you have money, and you have the cars, you're going to play on the weekend in the garages to make cool things out of your vehicle. Well, that's the same thing that Carl and Mr. Del Zio and the engineering team do. If you think about it, when they go out to the Arizona Proving Grounds, they're out there. How long do you stay out there, Mike? Months? 5-6 months where they're living in there, right? So now they have a test track there. They're away from home. They have equipment. They have track time. They have tools. And so what do enthusiasts do when that happens? You start to play and build things. This EcoBoost high performance package started from enthusiasts who took an RS motor out of a test mule, turned it 90 degrees, did all sorts of engineering magic over the weekends, put Carl in the car and said, we got to build this. And 15 months later, you have an over 300 horsepower, over 300 foot-pound of torque, 4-cylinder EcoBoost that delivers more horsepower than the Gen 5 4.6 liter Mustang GT I launched in 05. It's more horsepower and torque than the Shelby GT that we did with Carol on a pre-title basis. Right? That had the cold air kit, that had the calibration, changed a little bit of the suspension bits. So if you go from Gen 5 to Gen 6, you have enthusiast engineers who have taken the 4-cylinder out of the RS in a test car to play with it, and a package, 15 months later?
Yep.
15 months later from the time they did it in the garage till the time that this car was an approved program.